when we set the financial objectives, how we go about it is we look at all of our production like if it was a CSA, even the markets, and we basically say, okay, we'll have 200 CSA partners, and every week we'll deliver a box that will be of $25 worth of value for 20 or 22 weeks. If you add these numbers, it gives you, a gross of sales for that year. It's going to be $100,000. And then we know our margins, and usually I have a slide that tells you this. With your margins, it gives you your net profit in the year. Once you're comfortable with this, you do your production according to that. If you're not comfortable with your net, you can revisit the number of shares, you can revisit the cost of a weekly share, or you can revisit the number of weeks you're going to do this. Or you can plan to have outside work in the winter or whatever, but at least you're kind of like, you're getting a sense of what's going to happen in the upcoming year. Okay? And once you have that number, then you determine your production according to that. So what we want to do as an example is say we have 200 partners, $25 a week is what we'll put in the box for 22 weeks. And then the question is, what goes in a share? And so on our farm, what we've done since the start is we have 8 to 12 different items per box. We have a lettuce every week. We have greens every week, kale, chards, bok choys. These are super popular here in Vermont, but in Quebec, kale is starting to become popular. So, but we would put them every week because we knew that people in Vermont were eating them all the time. So it was just a matter of, So, and we'll have roots, vegetables, a mix of them, carrots with beets, whatever. And we'll aim to have fruit vegetables as soon as possible. Eggplants, bell peppers, tomatoes. So then what we do is we create the shares. So share 1, okay, so that's like June 16th. We decide that it's going to be spinach, radish, cucumbers, summer squash. We set the price, and that gives you the value of that share. So our aim was $25 a week, so that's close enough. We're happy. That's what we want to do for the first share. And there's going to be 200 people getting that share. Okay? We do the same thing for the next week and the next week. And we physically in the winter plan the whole 22-week program, specifically deciding what would go in each share. Okay? Once we get that, we need to answer these 2 questions. If I want to have radishes on the 16th of June for 200 families, how much do I need to plant and when do I need to plant it? And again, that's where the beds as unit of measure is really interesting, because we've calculated on the farm, we've calculated the yields of intensive spacings of all of our crops per 100-foot bed. And with these numbers, it's easy to calculate what the needs are for 200 families at a given point in time. Tells us how many beds we need to plant. Okay? So we have these numbers, and you have them too because you have the book. And you have other charts like these that tell you the number of days plants need to stay in their cells. And then we go on marking it like that. So for all of the crops that we had determined for every share, we go radishes by the 16th of June. We look in our charts. Radishes is pretty easy. We know that radishes from seed to first harvest, 30 days, we need to plant it on the 15th of May. And we need at least 1 bed because it's 200 bunch per bed. Okay? And then we go on doing the same with all of our crops, spinach, and then we add the transplant date, which is important because that tells us when the crop is physically being planted in the garden. So we need these information. When to start it, when to transplant it, and how many beds for all of our crops that are in every week's share. Okay? With that information, then we sum everything up. Okay? These are examples we could do. We sum everything up, and then that tells me all of the radishes I'll be planting in the season. And the number of beds, and that's what I do my seed order. Okay? But why this is important is that all these numbers is what I put into my calendar. So I'll put, radishes. I need to direct seed on the 15th of May, 1 bed of racks. And then I'm going to go down the list and make sure that everything I plan for is in my calendar. My calendar is my guideline in the summer. Because in the summer, it's crazy. There's so many things happening. Jean-Luc is coming back from his bike trip, and we don't have room for him anymore. And all these things are happening. I'm going to market, whatever. And I need to have a guideline that's keeping me on track with what I need to do. So I'm just following the calendar blindly, assuming that we didn't space out in the winter, that we've planned it all well. And we're just following the calendar. So it's telling us what to plant, when to start, and then with the field map, where is it going to go in the garden. When we do this, it's also at that point in time, they're like, okay, I'm planning 4 beds of carrots on the 17th of August. Ring a bell. What do I need to plan when I'm doing carrots? Oh, I'm doing pre-emergence. So I need to prepare my beds 10 days ahead of time. I write it down in the winter. So I need to prepare 4 beds for next week's seedlings. So all of this information that I know, all this management practices, rust flies. Oh, I need to put a net in August over my carrots. Put it in the calendar. All of this information is in the calendar so that it's really a guideline of everything that needs to not be forgotten. Super valuable. Yeah.
How well do you find that you stick to that date? Do you bump things if you find seasons a week?
Yeah, we bump things. It's never like that. But at least it's like a target. And then, sometimes, okay, carrots are not ready, but the beets are, so we'll put the beets instead, and we'll play around. But this is really a reminder not to forget to do all these things that need to be done. And then we adjust. And we write notes of all the things that we forgot or that we wrongly planned or that went wrong. Sometimes we put the dates in there that are just off. So we have a binder where we write per crop everything that went wrong, and then the next year around we revisit the calendar with these notes to correct what went wrong. And we're going to take a break with this thing. Then when it's time to put everything into the garden, there's my rotation. And we talked about this morning. It's like, well, I had planned to have 7 beds of leeks and 13 beds of onions. Problem is I only have 16 beds. So what do I do? What do I do?
Plant them on flat, transplant.
I have no choice. If I want to respect my rotation, I revisit my production plan and I plan to not have more than 4 of this and 12 of onions. So the crop rotation limits my ability to decide what I want to do. So it's a big bummer. But at least I'm following the rotation. That's the only way to follow a rotation is if you follow it.
So when you're doing all that planning, you double check with yourself, okay, I only have those number of beds, I need
Yeah.
to back off. Okay.
Well, after a couple of, we know.
Yeah.
But the first few years we would get into that problem all the time.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying that this is the ultimate way to do this. It's one way that works. You guys can figure out a more creative way or sophisticated way, but with crop rotation is a constraint that you're following. So, one last thing about these is that when I'm doing my field blocks, I'm punching in the numbers. So this is one bed. This is the same bed, okay, over time. So it starts with bean, and I need to know beans, how long, you know, from seed or from transplant to last harvest, how long they occupy the space. Because I need to make a dash here to say that August 10th, it's free. So then my spinach can go and follow it. So for all of our crop, we need to know how long they occupy the space. And that's the only way we can do timely successions. So we know ahead of time what's replacing what. And this is all planned for. Okay? And you can add another one here if you'd have, you know, a longer growth.
So is the reason, like, the tea, there's lettuce, it ends on July 1st, and the beans start on July 20th, so you put black plastic down, is that?
Okay, so you're here,
Yeah.
it goes like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this part here, you guys, this part is so important, okay? Because at that time, I'm making choices. I'm deciding that, you know, I'm direct seeding radishes, turnips, carrots, arugula. I'm putting them all together because my water line that I use for my direct seeded crop will water all of them together. So that's one thing. So I'm all transplanting, direct seeding them around the same date. So I'm not bringing all my material outside for 1 or 2 bed. I'm bringing everything down for 6 or 7 bed. It's the same thing if I know that certain ones need to be covered with a net. I'll put them all together so I won't have like 2 beds covered and then 4 beds not covered and then 2 beds covered. I'll put the 4 beds together and it's going to go faster to cover everything. So all of these simple stuff, they're all built in when we look at this. And then I want to leave leeway for my tarp to operate. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes there's no room for the tarp. Sometimes I'll make a mistake because I'm trying to plug everything, how it works. So it's not perfect, but at least it's aiming. And I'm bringing a lot of the decision making that would happen in the heat of the season in the winter time, where I do have a lot of time because I'm actually happy to be inside by the fire stove, especially like days like today. So this is like really, really important stuff. And a big part of our farming success is because we take the time to think about these things in the winter month. All right. Great. Thank you for your attention span. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, question.
Okay. And I noticed in your schedule, right, you didn't plant anything in the winter for spring.
Yeah.
Okay, because I plant a lot of spinach
Yeah.
in October, and it comes up in whenever it wants to come up.
When is that?
April.
I don't have a market before June.
Oh, well, there you go.
So I don't do asparagus.
Ah,
No.
there you go. That explains it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That explains the whole thing. I don't have a market for winter production even. I could make one,
Yeah.
but people are not excited enough to pay a premium for me to go freeze my ass off while I could be surfing.
That would be a big premium, wouldn't it?
It's just, this is not total reality because
This is something I understand perfectly.
I believe that, you know, being in production in the winter has a lot of merit to it. But I myself, given the choice, would rather do something different. But I'm still interested in maximizing, you know, my season. So I'm looking at, for me, winter production is like spring. This is where I want to really focus with this thing, because I want to be, when my markets open in June, I want to have everything. And I've kind of learned that I make my money in June and in July, before the bigger mechanized growers get at market with everything also. And since I'm smaller and I have different techniques that I really can intensify things, I can be at market the first with everything, which is really what I aim for. So for me, season extension is not winter production, it's like spring, early spring production, and fall extension, unheated tunnels. And I'm going to show you quickly some of the things that we're doing. And again, if there's one place in the world where, you know, the Mecca is Vermont and Maine, so you're probably not going to learn anything new here, but you never know. So the first thing is using these row covers. You know, farming now is row cover farming. There's no way around that. I told you guys that I don't put cover crops or, you know, anything in my alleyways because I want to use the dirt to anchor them. I also use these sandbags. They're UV treated. If they're not UV treated, you pick them up and then they fall apart. I get mine from Dubois here in Quebec, not far. You guys have a great exchange rate now. So your dollar is worth 120 in Quebec, in Canada, so it's a great time to buy from there. And they sell these wires that they fold back, which I really like. They're easier to store that way. We also use PEX tubes for crops that are higher, broccolis and summer squash. So PEX tube, and then we have a drill with a mesh, make a hole, put the PEX in. You see that here. The higher the mini tunnel, the hotter it can get if the sun pokes out. And it can get too hot. So let's say for winter squash, for summer squash, you know, they're sensitive to field heat. I don't know if you guys, it happened to you, but you transplant them, you cover them with a row cover because it's really early, but then the sun comes out and then and some of them even die. So at one point you kind of need to open the row cover. But if you open the row cover, who comes in? The cucumber beetle. And that's a big bummer. So what we do is that we have an insect net and a row cover so that we can open the row cover, but the crop is still protected. This is a picture of what we do in the spring. I hear this all the time, and it's going to start soon, like in a month. My friends will be saying, "Oh, I can't wait to get into my fields. Can't wait to get into my fields." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Well, you know, it needs to dry up so that I can go in my field." And what they're talking about is go in their fields with their tractors. And I'm like, "Well, what? You want to prepare your soil in the spring with a tractor? Like, and you're waiting for the right conditions?" And it's just like, what are you talking about, you know? It's crazy. Why don't you prepare? I know I've prepared my fields 10 years ago, you know? And then I'm with a light-powered tool. And as soon as the snow melts, I can go in. And so for me, it doesn't make any sense, but that's fine. That's my competitive advantage on them, because I'll be the first at market with everything. So quick hoops, metal hoops made from electrical conduit. They're better for the fall, or if you have like late spring snowfalls, they're stronger. The problem with them is that I think they're 10 feet, and they work when the beds are 12-inch to cover 2 beds. When your beds are 18-inch, they're not big enough, which is a problem. if you're doing this, make sure that the first one and the last one is well anchored, because if the first one goes, the whole thing kind of... So we brace them this way, or what we always do, regardless of if they're metal, plastic, wire hoops or whatever, we put them in a cross. There's one this, like one, and the one like that. The first one and the last one. So we cross them. So that makes them stronger. This is a picture of a caterpillar tunnel. This is the approach that we have for season extension. And what they're called caterpillar because they look like a caterpillar. And what they are is that we've started to work with these many, many years ago. They was like the same principle. We would have, bigger hoops made out of PVC pipes, and then we would cut the rebars and have the rebars in like 2 feet in, 1 feet out, and then we would just kind of slide the hoop, and then you brace, you tie the top ridge with a rope in a slip knot, and so that holds them together, and then the last one is tied down, so it creates a structure that is really strong. And then you flip the plastic over it, and then I'm going to come back here. You flip the plastic over it, and then you have these ropes that are coming and tying everything down. Okay? So,
Can you go back one slide?
yeah, one slide is there. One slide is here. So we started that way. And then 1 year, and then my friends got into bending metal. It's really popular now. And so they had an open house presenting their model of bended metals. And then a greenhouse manufacturer came. And, he wasn't really impressed. He said, it's pretty interesting, but you guys should call us because we're experts at this. And, we have good price on metal, and we know how to bend this better. And, it was a very positive meeting. But they came up with this caterpillar that we use on our farm, which is like 10 million times better in its simplicity at a lower price. So that was for me another example of why I'm a proponent of not being so self-reliant, but being integrated in your community of expert. And so these are the caterpillar tunnels that we use now on the farm. I paid $1,200 for a 16 feet by 100 feet long caterpillar tunnel. So that's pretty cheap. And why we like these guys is that you can move them easily. It takes like 3 hours for 2 of us to take it down and take it back up again. So it's going to be put in the fields really early in the spring, and then in the summer I'll move it over onto the tomatoes, and then when the tomato season is going to an end, I'll cover fall crops in October and November. So I'll be using, and every time it's like 4 beds, so one house will cover 12 beds. So that's a great usage of the greenhouse. Yes.
You have the anchor of that
Yeah, I should have a picture of the anchor. That you see it here, and it's really well designed. The anchor is really important part to really hold it down. But there's different things. I've asked them to have these tubes. They're like extensions, because in the winter, in the spring, I want my tunnel to be lower because there's a lot of wind. But so I don't mind bending down. But in the summer, I want to work like a human being, so I want it to be a bit higher, not like a dork, like that. And so I can quickly put these on. And so that's how it looks like. And that's how we hold it up. So it's just like a little hook that you can just flip inside or flip outside, and that holds the plastic. So really, really simple stuff, but used with great advantage. Really like this concept of caterpillar tunnels.
Do you use any other material besides plastic?
I haven't tried them with nets. Perhaps I will. Yeah. So yeah.
Sorry, can you say why this design is better than the one that your friends were making?
Because it's cheaper.
Who's the manufacturer?
Is he still there? Yeah, Richard there. They're called Tessier, and they're in Quebec. Yeah, you guys can talk to him at the end. It's better because they came up with this, and the anchors are better, and it's just it was one example for me of us trying to innovate and working from our needs, and then having an expert supplier come in and say, well, yes, we can help you with your need and build these things according to what you want. And now, as more and more, people getting to market gardening and smaller farms, there's a market for these kind of small tools and small equipment. So that's pretty cool.
Have you tried the mobile houses that Pioneer?
Yeah, well, I don't grow 4-season, so for me this is good enough. The fact that I can move it everywhere I want in the garden is what I want. But it's really a 3-season thing. And that's a picture of my, Richard, you probably remember that picture. That was Tim. He worked 2 years on my farm, then he started his farm. He bought these caterpillar from Tessier, and after 2 weeks that happened. So they are 3-season, but if something like this happens, they'll bend, but they won't break. So it's not a big issue. So that's why you also want to have 4-season tunnels that on my farm they're fixed. They could be movable, but they're anchored, and there's drainage inside and on the perimeters. And this is like another level. So we have 2 of these on my farm. They're 24 by 100. And we use them in the spring a lot for tomatoes, for early crops of beets, carrots. We're intercropping. You see there's transplanted beets that are planted at the feet of the cucumbers. So these are about, I think, 5,000 or 6,000. So they're more pricey, but they can stick up the whole season, which is what you want. And a greenhouse, like my greenhouse, is more around 20,000 now, because it's a bigger house, and I've even paid for people to help put it up. But that's like 32 by 100. So we just went gradually. And now the next step, if we would be to have gutter greenhouses, because the more space you have, the easier it is to heat. Like I would have if we could have not cheap but affordable gutter connected greenhouses that would be 100 by 100. You could get a lot of production from that.
Someone told me that also the proportions make a difference. Like a narrower greenhouse is going to be less efficient to heat than it's better to have them a square.
Yeah, well, it's because you lose all your heat on your sides. So the bigger it is, then in the middle it'll be without even heating it, it wouldn't freeze for sure. So then you could put bananas and just papayas and just go crazy. Dig a pond and have a pool. All right, so we use these in the spring for that, and we do salad mix also in the spring and in the fall. Salad mix because it can take a light frost, and I have a market for that pretty much year round if I want. So the only drawback is you need to cover at night and uncover during the day, which is fine. We put the kids to bed, and then we put the vegetables to bed. And notice the doors, okay? So this is not the example of the best door in the world, but if this was to be heated, you would need to have a door that seals, because That's, instead of looking at ways, alternative energy sources, there's none out there that are really efficient, more than propane and fuel. So the way to save is to make sure that when you're heating, you're not losing your heat outside, cold air coming in, and you can put, blankets on stuff, and it's really about what's the word? Conservation is the way to go to build efficiency in a heated greenhouse. This is a picture I took here in I don't remember where, in Vermont. I liked because the guy was going from me and my wife doing the work to just being alone, just kind of like unrolling the whole thing, which is, little details sometimes, eh? Little details, but I tell you, a lot of people don't think about this. Like my best example ever, I was working with this man. His name was Gary. He was 65. He had been farming for 35 years. He had animals. And we were doing small straw bales together. And we were bringing some of them inside his barn. And, sometimes they get to be somewhat heavy, these bales. And so I had a bale on my back, and I was following him in. And then he had a door. And so he was, hey, JM, when you get in, that's the way to do it. You put your bale like that, and then you can open the door, and then you leave it, and then you can swipe in like that, and it works well. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then I looked at that and said, well, Gary, how long have you been doing this? This has been like that for 20 years. I'm like, why don't we take 5 minutes to unscrew the door and put it the other way, so that you can just push into it? And he had never thought about that. And it's just to say, sometimes, So, anyway. It's not to be a wise ass, but it's just to express that, sometimes we don't, you could do this forever and ever and ever, 30 years. And some guy just took like an hour and built that. So we don't do a lot of winter production now on the farm. It might change in the future. But, the markets weren't very hot for, the salad mix we sell at $7 a pound. So if I were to go to New York, perhaps that would work. But at $7 a pound, I'd rather do something else.
$64 a pound right now in the market in New York City. So.
$64 a pound?
Yeah, I'll sell you a lot right after the.
I need to take time to get this information in my body. No, but
Is the drive?
it's 5 hours.
A small jet plane for him now, he's gonna have all the money in the world.
I would do mash at that price.
My record on Mosh is in little boxes, $120 a pound. All-time record for selling anything.
Okay, so
Reconsidering your numbers.
I don't know how I feel about that. I feel that I'm kind of like, I'm left out of the, I feel left out of the thing. But anyway, that's fine. Okay, so let's talk about, any questions? Let's talk about insects. Just move on fast with winter production. There's a lot of things that we do pretty well on our farm, but insects it's a tough one. It seems that new insects are popping up every other year. You guys are in the same boat as we are. So, the only thing that we did on our farm that really helps is to be prepared. So we have a solution that is thought about ahead of time for all the problems that we did face. And most of them is, the most preferred solution is these insect nets, because it's mechanical, it's physical, and it works. So we use a lot of these nets. We also use different biopesticides on certain circumstances. When we do, we dress up for the occasion. We don't take these pesticides lightly, because even if they're, biological, whatever, they're still produced by the same companies that produce the nasty ones. And so they're toxic. So we take good precautions there, and we scout for the problems. And In Quebec, we're really blessed by this. We have a network of professional scouters that are, they're sending growers alert, telling them which insect has arrived where by email, and it's free. And so we get these emails, these alert. It also talks about certain disease that are present. And so then I go out and I know what I'm looking for. Makes a huge difference. So and then when I get something like this, usually I can compare it to the picture that I have in the alert. And it correlates, under the same climate, under the same period of time. Usually if it looks like this, it's pretty much what the scouters were warning me about. So this is you guys should get that going here. It makes a big difference. We also use a lot of lures and traps to try to detect the problem before it gets to be one. So that's a great way to do that. Talked about these nets. I don't think we can do organics without nets anymore. It's just that's the situation we're in. So yeah, there's a couple of them out there. You need to find the net for the insect that you're protecting against, because like these are for the sweet midge, really fine mesh, really fragile, really expensive. These are for the cucumber beetles, bigger mesh, last for 10 years. So each net has, the insect you want to protect with. So it boils down to be really aware of what might happen. You need to do the research in the winter and be prepared. Okay, so this is how we got around the problem of growing cucumbers without losing the crop to the cucumber beetle, which was by putting a net inside, by sealing the tunnel with an insect net. And when I say sealing, I mean there was no holes, no way one insect can get in. Because the cucumber beetle, what it does is that it transmits bacterial wilt. And then you see these, you have a super nice plant, and then they all start to die off. That's the wilt. And one beetle can spread the disease to all of them. So we sealed it, and then we have this vestibule that, we open the door, close the door, we inspect, no cucumber beetles. If there would be one, we have a fly swapper, we would kill it. And then we open the other door, and then we get in. When we want to, get the produce out, the cucumbers out, we open the door, we bring all the produce inside the vestibules, we stack the cases of the harvest case, we close the door, and then we exit like that. And by doing this, the problem kind of went away, which was for us, a big gain. Yep.
Is that portable to different high tunnels, or is that on your heated screen?
No, these are in the tunnels. Yeah, they're kind of like, you don't see it, but they're kind of inside the plastics. Everything is sealed and tight. But this is like, you get that at Home Depot. Well, you could either put bumblebees inside, or you get plants that are self-pollinating, like these cucumbers that we use. They don't need to be pollinized. So, yeah, good. I'm done with my presentation.
You said you had a link for this?
Yeah, if you guys want, we can take like 20 more minutes or 10 more minutes to just go randomly on certain things that I'm thinking about these days. And then we can do questions. And if you guys want to leave or eat ice cream, you can do that. So I'm done, but we can freelance a couple more slides. You guys want to do this? So this is a picture that I showed you. That was the first picture I showed you. Because I started the morning by presenting to you the numbers of our farm. And then I went about showing you our farming system, blah, blah, blah. But you know, this wasn't done in a year. It took us like 10 years to get there. So that's how we started. So it's important that people don't forget that. Some people have listened to my workshop and they were quite discouraged when they left because they were like, well, I think we're doing all wrong. That's not the approach. The approach is that you should pick some of the things that we're doing that works and integrate it into what you are doing. And always think that we started like that and you know, we grew the farm, you know, but trying to do it in a way that is really optimizing what's already there. And so I believe in that. This is a picture of our booth now. It's crazy because when we started, we were in New Mexico and the buzz around, you know, meeting the grower and eating the vegetables, it was so real. And then we went to Quebec and it was so not there. It's just, and then I would come to Burlington and I would feel good again. It's like, okay, no, this is happening. This is just taking time. And now it's happening. Now, like, the valves are turned on and people are super excited and, you know, meet the grower. It's crazy. It's a good time to be starting a farm operation. So some of the tricks that I've learned through the years, you know, this is a picture of my buddy's booth in New Mexico. These guys would do roots and they would pile so high and then, you know, they would watch it fly. Because the higher you pile, the more you sell. There's a direct correlation. So that's what we do on our farm. We try to pile high. This is a picture of how we started doing the box program. We would do everything in boxes. And it would take us, you know, we would harvest in the morning. And then we would wash the vegetables, store them in the cold room for the night. And then the next morning, we would prepare the boxes and then deliver. It would take us about half a day, 2 people, to make the boxes. And then we just changed the way we're doing things, where we decided, why don't we let the CSA members make their own boxes? So we do this now, and we simply bring the produce to the market, to the area. We do our drop-offs in the park. And then they make their own boxes. And that saved us half a day's work, 2 people. That was huge for us. And what's great about it is that these guys have the impression that they're choosing. So they're happy. You know, they're like, oh, this is great. We get to choose now. So pictures of that. That was quite a time saver. Like, that makes a difference. Another one of a successful story was that farm-to-table event that we did one year. We're from Montreal, and so we would have these open farm day, and nobody would come. And you know, it was Sunday, and we had prepared a lunch, and we weren't sailing in Burlington or whatever. And then 6 or 10 people would show up for the whole day, and we kind of felt bummed about that. So one year we decided that, you know, why don't we get our CSA member to pay for the event and pay people to set the whole thing up, pay people to, you know, cook, and have these guys pay for it. So that was our thought. And then we said, we should not ask them for this. We should just impose it. So on the contract that year, there was in small print a new fee of $20 for the farm-to-table event. And the reason why we wanted this to be like that is because when it was time to come to invite them, we said, well, you guys paid for it. You should come. And so we had a chef come and do this, and then almost everybody came. It was great. And that was like the first year where the CSA kind of like, the glue got, you know, together. And we've had these customers. That's the French woman that would also complain about the leaks. Because we invite also our market customers. And most of them have been with us for 10 years now because of these farm-to-table events. It was just about finding the way to get everybody to come.
Do you
So-
grow flowers?
No, I don't. Yeah. But these are flowers from the area, but you guys know this tool? Quick Cut Harvester came out 2 years ago. That for us was huge because, you know, it used to take the 4 of us 3 hours to do the harvest twice a week. And then that tool came, and then I would do the exact same job, but in like 40 minutes, just me. So I was really excited about that. And these are the kind of tools that are coming out now, tailor-made for our needs. And, you know, saves time. And again, time is what we don't have. So I'm really happy to pay $500 and save, you know, how many hours of work per week? This is valuable to me. Moving on. This is how we used to wash, no, we used to wash greens in a washing machine, like everybody does. And then we had an inspector, food safety inspector, come in and say, because I was on national TV presenting this, just my wife got really upset that time. Why do you need to talk about what we're doing to everyone? And so the washing machine was out. So we bought that. That doesn't work. It's crap. Don't buy it. And then I came here, and Rock from the Intervale Center had the same problem. But he figured it out. He just stripped the whole thing and had only the... So the food inspector couldn't say that there was a problem because it was stainless steel. And so I like that. Then we went to do Salanovas instead of these 12 rows of really densely seeded Salamix. These are hybridized to have all the outer leaves to be small. So mature heads have all small leaves. And it was advertised as being 40% more production per square feet, and it's true. You just get more yields by using these mini heads to do your Salamix. Then the problem was, well, it's taking a long time because it's 4 rows, 6-inch on the rows, and I'm planting 4 to 6 beds, which came to be a lot of transplanting. And that's why the paper pot, for me, is very valuable. This is a picture of an experiment that's been going on for 3 years on my farm. We're doing Rameau wood chips. I don't know if some of you guys have ever heard about that. You can look it up on the internet, get the information that is coming from Canada and Quebec. There's been 30 years of research on using the top branches of hardwoods that are cut in the spring, where all the energy of the trees goes into the top branches. You cut these branches and you chip them and you put them into the soil to colonize the soil with fungi. And we do this by putting it in the aisles for a year to really leave enough time for the microbial life to start to break it down. And it's wet because there's a depression there. And then what we do is when we raise our beds, we take this and put it onto the bed. So my whole approach now is shifting, and instead of doing compost, I'm going to start to do compost like in the aisles, using material and using the aisle as a compost.
What's the website?
I don't know. It's Rameau wood chip. Yeah, some people need to pick up on that. By adding this to the soil, you can really boost the organic matter content, but like big time. Because wood like that is really potent. These are not like just wood chips. These are Rameau wood chips. There's a whole technique about it. So I'm highly interested in that. And so that's an experiment that's going on. And so that's how we would close the season. Well, I would have these Rameau wood chips, and then I would have a cover crop.
Does that mean you're not rotitilling the pads anymore for cultivation?
Well, yeah, you can, because I don't put enough of it. So that's the whole thing.
But does it reduce the amount, some of the need for the rotitilling?
Well, I've told you guys that I don't want any weeds to go to seed. So sometimes I'm thinking it's faster for me to go with a wheel hoe and do the whole thing than to just go out and pick certain ones that are coming up. So I'm not putting enough of it so that it kind of like, but I could. But just this, you should see, it's like the whole room full of branches. So that's the other thing. It takes a lot of branches. So I'm doing one field block every year. And so now I have 3 done. And I don't know the result of that. So that's why I haven't talked about this in my book. I present this because I think this is a great approach, but I have no guarantee.
Do you put it on in the fall?
On the what?
Do you put it on in the fall or whenever you can?
Yeah, the fall would be ideal actually. This is a whole set of tools for permanent beds for tractor implements, and with the idea of not overhauling the soil. Surface cultivators, and these are tools that come from the guy I talked about that was really fabulous in France, and they've wrote a book called the Adabio book, and it tells people how to make these tools with all the measurements. It's in millimeters, however. And so I'm showing this here because I see that the future is going towards permanent bed systems, even in mechanized models. Because there's so many advantages to working to not plow. And that is really my last slide. Great. Thank you so much, It was a long day.